My name is Lloyd Palum. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Rochester here in upstate New York. And about 4 years ago, we created a new class within the curriculum at the University of Rochester Data Science Institute called Data Science at Scale. And this course was purpose built to sort of put part of the curriculum firmly on a practical application of data science and how you do that at scale. Whereas many of our other courses in the curriculum focus on theoretical aspects and are what I would call deep dive on narrow subjects. This course is more of a broad-based introduction to all of the things that comprise building data science or data applications at scale using data science. And so the course materials that we use are pretty closely aligned with what Databricks has for materials as well. Learning Spark was written, of course, by some folks at Databricks. And then there's an early release book that we also touch on that delves into the Delta Lake technology. But we introduce Spark and Delta Lake. You'll see in a coming slide some of the other broader aspects that we cover. But we use sort of a tandem between the Databricks Community Edition that we get the students started on early part of the course. And then by the end of the course, we're running a larger group project within the Databricks Enterprise Edition. And you'll see later on in my talk, this is really where we're making some improvements most recently that are quite impactful. And in terms of how we teach this material, it's really a combination of lecture content, presentations, mostly centered around the conceptual introduction to a lot of these things. And then there's a lot of notebook and coding walkthroughs that give the students the practical introduction to those concepts and how they manifest themselves in code and projects. And then we lead them up to a final project that's fairly comprehensive at the end of the class. This picture is a really good, say it all with one picture. We essentially introduce the students to the conceptual process of building a data intensive application. And you can kind of see that along the top. None of this is probably that new for people. It really has become prototypical in terms of the way that you would talk about the process of building one of these applications. But then the other thing that we're doing is we're marrying that up with specific platforms, and in particular, the ones that are available on Databricks Enterprise Edition. And it's the combination of Spark and all the tooling and orchestration of Spark, along with MLOps and MLflow and data warehousing feature storage within Delta Lake. And so the students become aware of these three very specific platforms that they can employ to run that process that we're talking about during this class. So how do we do it? It's really broken down into modules. So we start out talking about data intensive applications in general, and then we proceed through, learning Spark. We're moving pretty rapidly because the students are expected to know SQL and Python. So we're not really stopping and smelling the roses in terms of code development or SQL. We're moving, really fast and focusing on how to use Spark. Then we graduate into Delta Lakes and machine learning operations with MLflow. And then finally, in the last 6 weeks or so of the course, we do an end-to-end application that touches every aspect of that process and the platform elements that we've been talking about. Yeah, so this course is 4 years old. I started working with Rob actually 4 years ago. I think this is the fourth time that we've offered the course. We steered through COVID and everything, doing it remotely, so there was some hiccups in the road. But up until this year, we've been managing everything in what I would call a very manual, hands-on way. Like I was setting up student accounts using scripts and the Databricks command line interface. Each student would get assigned to groups within Databricks. Again, all this is being done with bash scripts and, sort of orchestrating the whole thing behind the scenes. Setting up AWS resources in terms of what clusters were available for students and making sure they had access to just the ones that we would like them to use. Trying to provision S3 buckets and things like that for data that's specific for student projects. There was a lot of system administration between AWS and Databricks going on to orchestrate this course. And I guess the real upshot of why that is important is that it really was stymieing the discussion, I think, around the university to use this platform and approach more broadly. So without me and some of my fellow um, professors that were focused solely on this course doing all this administration, it wasn't really moving beyond, this course. And so what we were able to do this semester that's kind of exciting is we brought company Vocareum into the mix. Rob had spearheaded a discussion with them, and then I, was eager to raise my hand and become a beta or a prototype for this. And essentially what this allows us to do is we're moving into a world where our learning management system, we're at the University of Rochester, that's Blackboard. There's other learning management systems, of course, that many of you are probably using that aren't Blackboard that would function similarly. And then Vocareum is essentially a learning platform that plugs into the element to Blackboard and gives us essentially the ability to make assignments and projects and form groups, and students are essentially automatically enrolled through the single sign-on capability of Blackboard. And then Vocareum takes control of Databricks through all of the API interaction that you can use to manage Databricks. So this is essentially relieving all of the manual steps that I'd been doing on the course over the last 3 years, and making this sort of seamlessly integrated into what the university's already using for class management and learning management across all the courses at U of R. So we have people in the business school, for instance, that teach analytics, business intelligence type things, and they probably would benefit and are interested in Databricks. And it wouldn't be until it got to be this seamless that they would be able to tackle that. And
hey Lloyd.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to point out for the folks on the call, we've got Sanjay and John Deneen from Vocareum on the call as well. And I just want to give a shout out to Sanjay being able to meet face to face in San Francisco a couple of months ago, and just really having an amazing conversation about doing exactly this. We've got Jay Shan from Miami University in Ohio, and I remember he was so excited to get access to Databricks because it was, and the dogs are excited too, because Databricks was a simpler way for him to teach, simpler than at the time Cloudera. And for me, Vocareum as an interface to Databricks and AWS is like yet another step forward to where you can focus on pedagogy and cognition versus knitting together the tech pieces on the back end. So just wanted to point that out. So it's Sanjay Srivastava and John Deneen. So reach out to them into the chat directly if you'd like and have questions. But Lloyd was, we trusted Lloyd because we had a couple of years of experience, and knowing that Lloyd could get the icky tech bits done even without Vocareum. But it seems to have been a fairly wonderful pilot, and for me, it's something that allows this type of effort to scale. All right, I'll be quiet. Back to you, Lloyd. Thank you.
Yeah, amen. That's really the essence of it. The other thing that is maybe a little subtle here, but it really allows all these different software pieces allow it to become more seamless. The other thing that we were doing in previous semesters was, running around by hook or crook, garnering enough AWS credits to sort of bankroll the class. And so this puts us in a position where we can centralize, or Databricks can centralize, the cost of running these university programs on top of the Databricks platform. And I think it'll get a lot easier to work also with AWS or the preferred cloud providers that are underneath all this. It sort of makes it easier as a professor focused on education to get out of the nuts and bolts of setting up all these software platforms. And so far with Vocareum this semester, it's sort of been our beta run. It's running quite well. In fact, the students are in the last probably 2 weeks-ish, 10 days even, of their final project. So we're really heavily using the platform right now, and it seems to be quite good. So we're having a good experience. So yeah, that's the quick introduction to data science at scale at the University of Rochester and how we're leveraging Databricks and now Vocareum to do all this stuff.